pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome to, well, basically put, the second last episode that I have for films I should have talked about years ago. Because this series has been going pretty darn long so far. This is the 80th episode that I have in the series entirely. And for that, let's go ahead and talk about something else that I consider to be rather memorable and good by any means. The live-action film adaptation of Dora the Explorer, Dora and the Lost City of Gold. This was released in mid-August 2019, alongside a few other notable films that I remember from that time, as it was the time where I was working with the Marcus Theaters Corporation, so I myself got to be one of many witnesses that was able to find a lot of new releases. August 2019 was a pretty big time for new film releases of all sorts. I specifically remember a handful of things out there, not just this, but also 47 Meters Down Uncaged, which was the sequel to 47 Meters Down, and then there was also a sequel to the Angry Birds movie called Angry Birds Movie 2, which I also felt like was pretty good at the time. Then there was also Good Boys. Yeah, I got a feeling that I probably would have to talk about that as well, so, well, maybe not for the last episode, but at some point in the future, if I plan on doing a films I should have talked about years ago, part 2, then maybe that could be a thing. And who could also forget the film adaptation of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and The Peanut Butter Falcon. I tell you, there were all sorts of new films left and right. August 2019 was probably one of the biggest times of new film releases that I might possibly remember. But Dora and the Lost City of Gold I consider to be one of the most noteworthy because it was one of a few that I was actually able to watch in the theaters. But believe it or not, this was one of those special cases because at one time in mid-August 2019, when the film was still out in theaters at the time, I got let off early after some slowness had pretty much come around during a morning shift, and so I was free to go pretty much. But I basically took the time to go ahead and watch two movies, Dora and the Lost City of Gold and Good Boys. But unfortunately, when I went to go ahead and see Dora and the Lost City of Gold first, it unfortunately was already playing. So I pretty much got stuck in when it was already like 40, 50 minutes in. I was eventually able to watch it again from the first 40 to 50 minutes just so I can get caught up on that part. So basically speaking, I first watched the film from a certain point up until the very end, and then another time by September when it was about to leave the theaters, I then watched it from the beginning up until the point where I left off during my last viewing. So, I really gotta say, that was a pretty interesting time. But let's also not forget, the same exact date, August 18th, 2019, Dora the Lost City of Gold, Good Boys, and eventually I was able to watch 47 Meters Down Uncaged. The same exact day, I watched 3 movies in the theater, brand new ones. And that's just incredible the way I see it. It's like a new personal record for me. I don't know if there will ever be a time where I might go and see 4 movies at once, but I guess we'll see down the line if that's ever going to be a thing. I seriously doubt that though, because of what's been going on lately. And the theatering business is practically done for anyways, because of how bad things have been and how things always will be from the future going forward. Wow, that was kind of a nice long thread in and of itself, but anyways, for a live-action film adaptation, Dora and the Lost City of Gold does what it does best. It adapts to the original animated series from Nickelodeon and basically puts Isabelle Modell, pretty much? I don't really know how to pronounce the surname, but it's also important to note that Isabella's last name is now Merced. So, it's different than what you'd see in the credits, pretty much. So, Merced is now the official surname of Isabella, nowadays at least. Because it's been 2 years almost. Pretty much. 2 years. It's already been that long since that happened, pretty much. That's quite a while, but no, you know what though? It's not just Isabella that's like the main star of this film, but you also have the likes of Jeff Wahlberg, Michael Pena, Benicio del Toro, and Danny Trejo. Man, if you think that's awesome, I don't really know what else would be. But in all honesties, I find this film to be rather noteworthy by any means. Not only because of having such familiar names when it comes to acting, it's also like with a bunch of other films, like Outbreak, Shazam, and a bunch of other films out there where I could list the actors off the top of my head very easily because I'm very familiar with them. So, this would be another example of those, pretty much. Not all the actors, though, are well known to me, pretty much. Mostly because they are a bit more recent by any means. But when discussing this film entirely, the plot line is what's interesting about this. Dora has the chance to go from the jungle to living in the outside world, pretty much. In the United States, the state of California, where Dora goes and attends school, pretty much. And Dora tries to basically get along with other people to fit in very well with the rest of society that's considered normal by today's standards, but unfortunately doesn't get all too far. But thankfully, with the help of certain members of the family, like Diego, Dora is able to easily try and work all the way up to the top, pretty much. But then a certain thing takes place, where Dora, Diego, and a few others unfortunately end up trapped inside of a crate by accident during a field trip. And then what happens as well, what's interesting about this, is that they both end up back in the same jungle where Dora was originally from, pretty much. And this film really goes as far as possible to really try and capitalize on all sorts of things that are related to the show and all entire things, because you do have Boots, the monkey, who unfortunately is not wearing boots. Well, that is, of course, until, like, the very end, like, the end credits, pretty much. And then you have Swiper. Who could forget that? Danny Trejo and Benicio del Toro both do some pretty nice work on their voices and all that good stuff. But in all seriousness, as much as I prefer the classic voices of Harrison, Chad, and Mark Weiner as Swiper and Boots, Trejo and Del Toro are pretty noteworthy updates. It's a lot like with Jessica Lange, pretty much replacing Fay Wray in the King Kong 1976 remake, which is in fact a way of remaking the 33 classic. But when you really get down to it though, the film's premise is in fact finding the lost city of gold. At the time that people were talking bad about this film, I myself had to throw in a contribution of my own. I almost figured that this was some sort of lousy way of ripping off The Road to El Dorado, which that itself was clarified to be a lost city of gold. That is, of course, until I found out that there was such a thing as Uncharted. Yeah. Uncharted's idea of El Dorado being a large monument of some sorts that has a lot of curses thrown around to it, rather than being the usual depiction of a large golden city, it really makes us see things differently. I tell you, even Avengers Endgame made us really scratch our heads when it comes to looking at certain things that we've already known about for years, because other things have been talking about certain things for years. And in Avengers Endgame's case, it's about time travel. And the way they show it is a whole lot different. And even more so when they explain it. Gosh, I cannot even talk about that film though. So, Dora and the Lost City of Gold. By all means, I will necessarily point out, it's probably a bit too mature. When it's being labeled as a kid's film, and it has a certain rating to it, it's rated PG, sure. But most of the time, like, where are the critics? Where are the viewers who are there to test the film and make sure that it's supposed to go and find all sorts of good expectations to follow by most viewers and critics whom are going to see it in theaters? They're going to pay $15 for a ticket. Where are those kind of people? I mean, it's usual nowadays that they somehow get away with these things, but there's a difference here. There's always the likelihood that there's a stigma attached to this kind of film. There's stigmas attached to all these kinds of films that have had a reputation for years of being a certain way. And this film was rated PG, for the record. compared to the original show, which was more or less made for kids, as was rated TV Y7, like the majority of other shows out there nowadays, which is just strange. But again, when you really get down to it, there's probably a whole lot of other reasons why we could probably see these things differently. But Dora and the Lost City of Gold, a product of Nickelodeon, Paramount, and Walden Media, is a PG rated film. And in all honesty though, for something like this that had scored a pretty nice box office amount of $119 million, which is more than twice its budget. There was even the case where there was supposed to be a sequel this year. But unfortunately, this is yet another case of somebody contributing to the idea wiki of the fandom webpage. Yeah, so it's pretty much a hoax, in a way. But it is in fact just the product of the idea wiki. It is in fact the manifestation of what most people might consider to be good things that could happen in the future. I was able to get a kick out of it myself by looking at all the unique ways that Idea Wiki was able to try and convince us that we could be seeing these kind of films in the future, but no. We all know that those aren't truly going to happen. And because of the pandemic and the like, there's no way that a sequel for Dora and the Lost City of Gold would be made. Even though it did become successful at the box office and all that good stuff. But anyways, for the film's premise and all that, Dora and company looking out for the City of Gold, and one of those people in the group end up having to take a doo-doo. That's kind of an awkward moment in and of itself. And then of course you gotta remember when they're stepping in quicksand, and then there's the moment where every time they take their foot out of the sand, then it sounds like somebody's farting. Like, really? I don't really get it myself, why this thing has to try to be obnoxious sometimes. But I probably take that stuff for granted, so maybe just that, the joke's on me. I guess though, probably the most noteworthy part would be the very ending of this film. And I'm not just talking about the ending of the actual film where they find this gold monument and the like, and then there's a tribe that comes out and abducts one of the people from the group who had actually betrayed them and sold them out to some sort of militia. But I'm talking about the ending of the film where it was like some sort of music video that happens directly before the actual credits start to roll. And I will admit, I cannot even get it out of my head. Oh, hooray, we did it. We found the golden pata pata. All that good stuff. I cannot get it out of my head. It's probably the next best brain worm we probably discovered. More so than Baby Shark. More so than Pharrell Williams' Happy. More so than Gangnam Style. More so than anything else. Like, this is the new brainworm of this generation. Oh, hooray, we did it. More like, oh, hooray, I did it because I now had the courage to bring it up. Oh, man. Now, I bet you some of you are going to get that stuck in your head, too. Oh, gosh. I wonder if it's even playing, though. If it's really that popular. If it's really making us all, like, dance to the beat and all that. I really want to know if it's actually playing anywhere. If it's playing on the radio, if it's playing on a sound system, on a school network, anything at all. But then, of course, the real credits start to roll to the tune of Sayo from 2016. Which I'd say is a pretty nice pick in and of itself, as it does fit in. But this film, in its own right, I will actually say it's a pretty good film. If you can really distance yourself from a lot of the things out there that you might not find appealing to you because it makes you uncomfortable or irritated, then you can probably find some enjoyment out of this. The kick out of this would probably be a couple of things. The effects, the sound design, the camera angles, the screenplay, and even, of course, the climax. Because there are tons of twists you need to look out for. So, by any means, I will never call this a masterpiece. Maybe somebody else will. Because being that I was a 20-year-old in the year 2019, I myself was all grown up, with a brain that's nice and developed, and with a lot of strengths, little to no weaknesses in my place, and hundreds of other things that's just pretty much where I'm going to, in fact, have the courage to say that this film deserves itself a scoring of 7.6 out of 10. So not necessarily the highest of all expectations that I could possibly find out of this, but maybe someday we'll probably see the likelihood of something else developing. Until then though, that's just pretty much what I have to say about that. But if you want to see more go down on my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.